Hello, welcome to 10 Minute Teaching. I'm Ben Campbell. Today we're going to be talking about how to read poetry. It might seem like an easy question. How do we read a poem? Surely we start at the start, make our way to the middle and get to the end, much like how we would read a novel or a short story. But as generations of students have discovered, dealing with poetry can be a little bit more difficult than that. Well, in this video I'm going to show you one way which might make dealing with poetry a little bit easier for you. The first thing we need to know is that there are multiple different kinds of readings that we might want to do to a poem. So for instance, we might want to just do a literal reading to begin with. That is, we might just want to try and get a sense of what is the basic meaning in the poem. We might look for things like who are the characters, what happens in the poem, really low-level stuff. Once we've done that, we might try and do a deeper reading, perhaps a more analytical reading. We might be looking there for things like metaphors, similes, other literary techniques that the poet has tried to use. We might try and figure out why the poet has used those different techniques, what kind of effect the poet is trying to have on us, the reader. And once we've done that, we might bring those things together to give a reading. That is, we might try and give a response about what we think the poet is trying to say, or what kind of reactions we've had. That could include things that we think about the poem, and also emotions that we feel as we read through the poem. So it's not quite as simple as it might first seem then, but let's go through each of these different readings in turn and see how we could employ them. Let's talk first of all about that literal reading. Now, the temptation I find students often have is to jump right into the poem and start trying to look for things like metaphors and similes right off the bat. You must try and resist that temptation if you can. It might seem like that's what examiners are going to be asking you about, so surely you should go for that sort of stuff first. But if we don't understand the very basics of the poem, then we're going to really struggle to adequately explain why certain techniques are in the poem in the first place. So the first thing we want to do is just ask ourselves very basic questions like, what happens in the poem? Who are the characters in the poem? On a very basic level, what do we think is the tone of the poem? Is it a happy poem? Is it a poem about grief, perhaps? Once we've got those basic ideas, then we'll be able to do our closer analytical reading later. Let's take a look at an example to see how we might do this. And we'll use for an example a poem by a famous poet called Alfred Lord Tennyson. Let's have a read of his poem, The Eagle. He clasps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands. Ringed with the azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. Who's speaking? Who are the characters? What happens? Let's deal with the most obvious information first. We meet a he in the first line of the poem, someone who is clasping a crag with crooked hands. With the title of the poem in mind, it's probably safe to say that this is the eponymous eagle that the poem discusses. So our speaker must be some kind of observer of the eagle. Is the speaker a person or another animal, we might ask? Well, one thing we should be aware of is avoiding too much speculation. If it's not really important who the speaker is, we probably don't want to spend too much time speculating about whether it's this animal or that animal or a hunter or whatever. Let's just leave that to the side for the moment and focus on what's actually in the poem. So what about events? What happens in the poem? Well, when we look for events, we actually find something quite interesting. There are quite a few verbs in the poem which normally show actions, but most of these verbs actually only show the eagle waiting. Clasps, stands, crawls, and watches all show a lack of movement rather than a lot of energy and action. Only in the final line do we get an actual spurt of real action when the eagle swoops down like a thunderbolt. Perhaps that's enough for the surface level then. We have an eagle, he's waiting on the top of a mountain, and at the end of the poem he swoops down, presumably to try and catch some sort of unseen prey. Let's see what we can do if we apply a more analytical reading next. Now comes the fun bit, if you're a literature nerd like me. We've got a good handle on what's going on in the basics of the poem. So let's start to look at the kind of language, structure, and other literary techniques that Tennyson is using in his poem, and see if we can figure out what kind of effect he wants to create. We've already mentioned that there's a wide use of verbs in the poem, most of which create a sense of rising tension as the eagle waits patiently for its prey. The contrast between 5 lines of waiting and one final line of absolute action really helps to emphasize the sudden and violent strike of the eagle. This is particularly supported by the use of that simile, like a thunderbolt. This seems to suggest that the eagle's movements are not only swift, but also extremely destructive. Let's take a look at the presentation of the eagle as he waits, then. Firstly, we might notice that Tennyson uses words that are more commonly associated with humans rather than animals. Rather than it, he writes he. Rather than claws, he uses hands. And rather than saying something like the eagle perches, he says that the eagle stands. Why might this be? This is a point where different readers might have different interpretations, which is absolutely fine. It's one of the joys of poetry. For me, I'd probably say that Tennyson seems to want to challenge the idea that animals are lesser creatures than humans. By describing the eagle as a person in a position of great power, he might be trying to show that animals can be just as majestic and powerful as human beings. This kind of interpretation will become useful in our final kind of reading, so let's keep that to the side for now. What else can we see in the patterns of language and structure that Tennyson employs? Well, we could look at the rhyme scheme, for example. This poem has 2 stanzas, each with 3 rhyming lines. Is there some kind of effect there? Well, rhyme has a variety of uses, which again might be up to the reader's interpretation. Here the use of triples could suggest a kind of inevitability. It's almost as though that final verb, falls, couldn't help but appear after such stringent rhymes before it. Maybe this adds to our sense of the eagle as being in complete control, one whose prey has no hope of escaping. Other phrases in the poem do support that presentation of the eagle as a powerful being. We can start to build a pattern now of the various different bits of language and structure that we're seeing. Close to the sun in lonely lands puts the eagle atop the entire world. The sun is often an image of power, and the eagle is very close to that image. Ringed with the azure world shows the eagle to be surrounded by this dazzling blue sky. The way the grammar of this phrase is constructed seems to make the eagle the center point of this entire sky. And this again could show the eagle's importance and power. Here's a final example. We see this wrinkled sea in the poem. These great waves of the sea are shown to be so small and insignificant in the face of the eagle, who's so far above everything that they look like mere wrinkles. Again, this seems to add to a sense of the eagle being very powerful. All in all, then, we can see that in going over the poem again with a more analytical eye, we seem to have picked out a couple of key ideas about the eagle's patience and its power, and its destructive capabilities at the very end of the poem. There's plenty of room for us to take different opinions, though, as we work our way through the poem, and that brings us to our final type of reading. So we've amassed lots of information about the poem, both the surface meaning, just simply what's happening in the poem, and some more analytical pieces of information as well. So the final thing that we need to do is to give some kind of response. We need to see if we can figure out what we think about the poem, and we might think about what kind of emotions we think the poet has elicited in us as we've read through the poem. And this is the point where you can really apply your own interpretation. As we saw in The Eagle, there was a couple of different things we could have taken from that poem. We had the sense of the eagle's power, the fact that it was in control, and we also had a little bit of information about its destructive capabilities. Now, there's a couple of different ways you could take that. One reader might find this image of the eagle to be full of majesty and awe. Maybe this is an incredible homage to the power of nature, perhaps. Other readers, though, might focus perhaps on that final line where the eagle swoops down like a thunderbolt. If we're focusing a little bit more on the destructive capabilities of the eagle, maybe we'll see this poem in a more negative light. That really depends on your interpretation and how you react to the different kinds of language that we see in the poem. If you're writing a response, for instance, in an examination situation, you can absolutely discuss all these different interpretations. It's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, as long as the things that we're saying about the poem are rooted in evidence that we can actually see in the poem, then that's absolutely fine. So let's have a quick recap. We discussed today how to approach reading a poem, and we said that there were 3 different kinds of reading that we might want to do. First of all, we want to just do a literal reading. We really just want to get to grips with the surface meaning of the poem. What's happening in the poem? Who are the characters? Really basic stuff. Secondly, we want to then apply a more analytical reading. So we're looking there for things like metaphors, similes, different patterns of language, different elements of structure, anything that we can see in the poem that we think has been purposefully done by the poet to elicit some kind of response from us. And then thirdly, we want to bring all of that stuff together and see if we can formulate some kind of emotional response to that poem. Now, this isn't going to be a catch-all method that will solve all of your problems if you're trying and struggling to read poetry. There'll be many things in poems that you might well not get to grips with, either because it's a word or a reference that you don't know, or simply because poetry, by its very nature, is sometimes a little confusing. It uses language in new and interesting ways. It's meant to surprise and shock us. If that happens to you, don't worry. Try not to get disheartened. Figure out what you can about the poem, and then see if that helps you figure out some of the elements of the poem that you don't know. Keep working at it, do some Googling, look up some background on the poet or the poem, and that might help you give a little bit more of a coherent answer if you're trying to analyse any particular poem. Well, that's all for this episode of 10-Minute Teaching. Some further reading will be in the description below. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, check out the other videos on the channel, and if you have some suggestions for more things that you'd like me to teach you in 10 minutes, put them in the comments below. Thanks guys, and I'll see you next time.